lived in the most beautiful palace in all the world. It was made of the finest porcelain, very costly, and so fragile that it could only be touched with the greatest care. There were extraordinary flowers in the garden. The most beautiful ones had little silver bells tied to them, and they tinkled perpetually, so that all who passed would be sure to notice them. Every detail in the garden had been most carefully thought out, and it was so big that the gardener himself did not know where it ended. If one went on walking, one came to a woods of towering trees and mirror lakes. The path through the woods wandered all the way down to the sea, which was deep and blue, so deep that ships could sail right under the branches of the trees. Among these trees lived a nightingale, which sang so deliciously that even the poor fisherman, who had so much to do with all the mending and casting of his nets, that even he would stop his little boat, lay down, and listen. Every night he listened, and every night he thanked the bird for its wondrous song. Travelers from all over the world came to marvel at the emperor's city and his palace and his garden. But when they heard the song of the nightingale, they all agreed that it was the greatest marvel. When they returned home, the travelers told all about their visits, and scholars wrote books describing the city, the palace, and the garden. And they always spoke of the nightingale, the loveliest thing of all. And those who were poets praised in their verses the nightingale who lived in the woods by the deep blue sea. These books went all over the world, and in the course of time, some of them reached the emperor's library. There he sat in his golden chair, reading and nodding his head. He smiled with pleasure at the glowing descriptions of his city and palace and garden. But of all the emperor's treasures, he read, none is finer than the nightingale. What? What nightingale? I know nothing of it, and yet it lives in my very own garden. Why, I've never heard of it. Imagine my having to discover this in a book. Then he called in his prime minister, who was so grand that when anyone of a lower rank dared to speak to him or to ask him a question, he would only answer, "Pooh Wang," which really means nothing at all. There is said to be a remarkable bird called a nightingale here, said the emperor, and they say it's the finest thing in all my lands. Why have I never been told of it? I have never heard of it either, said the prime minister. It has never been presented at court. I wish it to appear here this evening to sing to me, said the emperor. The whole world seems to know that I possess this creature, yet I know nothing about it. Nor do I, your majesty, but I will seek it and I will find it for you. But where was it to be found? The prime minister ran upstairs and downstairs, and in and out of all the rooms and corridors. He asked everyone he met about the nightingale, but no one could tell him a thing. Then he hurried back to the emperor, quite out of breath, and exclaimed, Your Imperial Majesty, the Nightingale is a story invented by the people who write books, a myth, a fantasy, pure imagination. Most Serene Imperial Highness, do not believe everything that is written in books. But the book in which I read it was sent to me by the powerful Emperor of Japan. He does not exaggerate, therefore it must be true. I want to hear the Nightingale this very evening. Extend my most gracious protection to it. If it does not appear, the whole court will be severely punished. The Emperor of China did not exaggerate either, and the Prime Minister trembled and made a low bow. Then he ran again up and down the stairs and in and out of all the rooms and corridors. Half the court ran with him, for none of them wished to be punished. There was much questioning about this Nightingale, which was known to all the outside world, but to no one at the court. At last they found a little maid in the kitchen who said, "Oh heavens, the Nightingale! I know it well. Yes, indeed, it can sing. Every evening I am allowed to take some food to my poor sick mother, who lives down by the shore. On my way back, when I am tired, I rest a while in the wood, and then I hear the Nightingale. Its song brings tears into my eyes, and I feel as if my mother were kissing me." "Little kitchen maid," said the Prime Minister, "I will procure for you a permanent position in the kitchen with a fine title, and you will have permission to see our illustrious Emperor dine in the Great Hall, if you will take us to the Nightingale, for it is commanded to appear at court tonight." So they left the palace, following the little kitchen maid through the garden and down the path that led into the wood where the Nightingale sang. Half the court was there. They made barely a sound in their silk shoes on the mossy path. And as they were going along, they heard a sound from the deep wood. "Listen, that must be the Nightingale," said one of the courtiers. "What a powerful voice for such a tiny creature. It does sound a bit familiar. I have certainly heard it before." "No," said the kitchen maid, "those are the cows bellowing. We are a long way yet from the place." Then another sound was heard in the woods, and one of the courtiers remarked, "There it is! I hear it! It sounds like distant bells, exquisite temple bells." "No," said the kitchen maid, "those are frogs, but I think we will soon hear it now." Then the Nightingale began to sing. "But where is the Nightingale?" they said, and they looked into the tall trees. "There it is, there it sits," and the kitchen maid pointed to a little gray bird up among the branches. "I should have never thought it was like that," said one of the courtiers. "How common it looks! Seeing so many grand people must have frightened its colors away." "Little Nightingale," said the kitchen maid, Our gracious emperor would like to hear you sing." "With pleasure," said the nightingale, and it continued its song. "It's just like crystal bells," said one of the courtiers. "Look at its little throat, how active it is. To think that we have never heard it before. It will be a great success at court." "Shall I sing again to the emperor?" said the nightingale, thinking that he was present. "Most excellent nightingale," said the prime minister, "I have the honor to command your attendance at a court festival tonight, where you will charm his gracious majesty with your fascinating song." "It sounds best among the trees," said the nightingale, but it went with them willingly when it heard that the emperor wished it so. The palace had been brightened up for the occasion. The walls and floors of patterned porcelain shone with the light of countless lamps. The most beautiful flowers, all of the tinkling kind, were arranged in the corridors. There was much hurrying back and forth, and this made a great draught, which set all the tiny bells to ringing. In the center of the great hall, where the emperor sat, a rod had been fixed on which the nightingale was to perch. In came all the ministers and dignitaries of the city, officials of the treasury and their attendants, high priests and low priests, ladies in waiting and gentlemen in waiting. The whole court was assembled, and even some visitors from foreign lands. The kitchen maid was permitted to stand behind a screen, as she was now titled Keeper of the Imperial Salad Tongs. They were all dressed in their best. Everyone's eyes were turned to the little gray bird at which the emperor was nodding. The nightingale sang delightfully, and tears came into the emperor's eyes and rolled down his cheeks. The sweet melody melted all hearts. The emperor was so charmed that he said that the nightingale should have his gold slipper to wear round its neck. But the nightingale declined with thanks, for it had already been sufficiently rewarded. "I have seen the tears of my emperor. The tears of an emperor have a wonderful power, and that is my richest reward." "That is the most delightful coquetting I have ever heard," said the ladies of the court. And they took some water into their mouths to try to make the same gurgling when anyone spoke to them, thinking so to equal the nightingale. Even the lackeys and the chambermaids announced that they were satisfied, and that is saying a great deal. They were always the most difficult people to please. So the nightingale had made a sensation. It was to stay at court and have its own cage, as well as liberty to walk out twice a day and once at night. It was given 12 footmen, each one holding a silk ribbon which was tied round its leg. But there was no pleasure in that sort of outing. The whole town talked about the marvelous bird. If two people met and one said to the other night, the other answered gale, and then they sighed in perfect understanding. 11 shopkeepers named their children after the nightingale, but not one among them could sing. One morning the doorbell rang. A large parcel had been left for the emperor. Outside was written the word Nightingale. "Here we have another new book about this celebrated bird," said the emperor. But it was not a book. It was a little work of art in a box. It was an artificial nightingale, exactly like the living one, except that it was covered with diamonds and rubies and sapphires. When the artificial bird was wound up, it could sing one of the songs the real one sang, and it shook its tail, which glittered with silver and gold. A ribbon was tied round its neck on which was written, "The Emperor of Japan's Nightingale is poor compared to the Emperor of China's." Everybody said, "Oh, how beautiful it is!" And the person who brought the artificial bird immediately received the title of Imperial Nightingale Carrier-in-Chief. "Now they must sing together. What a duet that will be!" But they did not get along very well, for the real nightingale sang in its own way, and the artificial one could only sing waltzes. "There is no fault in that," said the music master. "It is perfect in time and correct in every way." Then the artificial bird had to sing alone. It was as great a success as the real one, and much prettier to look at because it sparkled like bracelets and breastpins. It sang the same tune 33 times over, and yet it was not tired. People would willingly have heard it from the beginning again, but the emperor said that the real one must have a turn now. But where was it? No one had noticed that it had flown out of the open window and back into its own green woods. "What is the meaning of this?" said the emperor. And all the court declared that it was a most ungrateful creature. "We have got the best bird, though," they said, and then the artificial bird had to sing again. This was the 34th time that they had heard the same tune, but they still hadn't quite caught on to it, for it was very difficult. The music master got permission to show the bird to the public on the next Sunday. "Don't forget to wind it up so that it may sing," said the emperor. So they heard it, and all became as enthusiastic over it as if they had drunk themselves merry on tea. They all said that it was a wondrous thing and nodded their heads, but the poor fisherman who had heard the real nightingale said, "It sounds very nice, and it is very nearly like the real one, but there is something missing." The music master wrote 25 volumes about the artificial bird. The treatise was very long and was written in all the most difficult Chinese characters. Everybody quoted it because it was full of so many words that they did not understand. So the real nightingale was banished from the kingdom, and the artificial bird had its place on a silken cushion close to the emperor's bed. All the presents it had received of gold and precious jewels were scattered round it. Its title had risen to be Chief Imperial Singer of the Bedchamber. In rank it stood number 1 on the left side, for the emperor reasoned that that side where the heart is the important one, and even an emperor's heart is on the left side. The music master praised the bird tremendously and insisted that it was much better than the real nightingale, not only on the outside with all its diamonds, rubies, and sapphires, but on the inside too, where its intricate mechanisms were a marvel in miniature. "You see, ladies and gentlemen, in the real nightingale you never know what you will hear. In the artificial one, everything is decided beforehand. So it is, and so it must remain. It can't be otherwise. You can account for things. You can open it and show all the ingenuity in arranging the waltzes, and how one note follows upon another." "Those are exactly our opinions," they all said. Things went on this way for a long time. The emperor, the court, and all the other Chinese knew every little gurgle in the song of the artificial bird by heart. But they liked it all the better for this, for they could all sing together. Even the little boys and girls in the street sang its song, and so did the emperor. One night, when the emperor was lying in bed listening to it, something gave up inside. "Oh dear," The emperor jumped out of bed and asked for his private physicians. But what could they do? Then they sent for the watchmaker, who after a good deal of talk and examination got the works to go again somehow. But he said that the bird would have to be spared as much as possible because it was so worn out, and it could only sing the last few measures that were still stuck in its throat. So they let the artificial bird sing only once a year. Then the music master made a little speech, using all the most difficult Chinese words. He said it was just as good as ever, and his saying it made it so. The seasons came and went, years passed, and everything moved along just like clockwork. The Prime Minister kept on ministering, the gentlemen of the court kept on courting, and the ladies kept on gurgling. The kitchen maid kept a fine polish on the imperial salad tongs. The music master wrote more books and lectured daily at his new music factory. Once a year, the jeweled Nightingale was cleaned, oiled, and taken out of the palace. A silver branch with jade leaves and ivory blossoms was its perch. Everyone who was anyone sang with it as it delivered its familiar, precious song. One winter night, the snow came. The mirror lakes turned to ice. Ships froze in their wakes and became white islands. The last of the fall flowers closed tightly against the cold, and every silver tinkle bell wore a little hat of hard snow. Soon all was covered, and the garden disappeared. A wind knocked against the palace door, then whipped through the corridors and rustled the emperor's robes and the drapes that hung around his bed. A chill came over him, and he fell ill. He lay quiet in his gorgeous bed, with all the velvet hangings and the heavy gold tassels. A long time passed, but he did not stir. Only the physician's feather, held close to his mouth, proved that some life was yet in him. "How is our dear emperor?" they all said hopefully. But the physician shook his head and said that this night would be his last, and a great grief came over all of the empire. The snow had barely cleared away when a new emperor was chosen. People stood in the street and asked the Prime Minister how the old emperor was getting on. "Hu Wang," he answered sadly. The emperor lay pale and cold in his great bed. The courtiers thought he was dead, and they all went off to pay their respects to their new emperor. The lackeys ran off to talk matters over, and the chambermaids gave a party. Cloth had been laid down in all the rooms and corridors, so as to deaden the sound of footsteps, so it was very, very quiet. But the emperor was not dead yet. He lay still in the bedroom, which was thick with incense. Nearby was a window, and the moon streamed in upon the emperor and the artificial bird beside him. The poor emperor could hardly breathe. He seemed to have a weight on his chest. He opened his eyes, and then he saw that it was Death, sitting upon his chest, wearing his golden crown. In one hand he held the emperor's golden sword, and in the other his imperial banner. From among the folds of the velvet hangings peered many curious faces. Some were hideous, others gentle and pleasant. They were all the emperor's good and bad deeds, which now looked him in the face when death was weighing him down. "Remember us. Do you remember me?" They told the emperor so many things that he did not wish to know. He was frozen with fear. "I never knew that. I never knew it. Music, music, sound the great drums, that I may not hear what they are saying." But they went on, and Death sat nodding his head at all that was said. "Music," shrieked the emperor, "you precious little golden bird, sing, sing. I have loaded you with precious stones, and even hung my own golden slipper round your neck. Sing, sing, I tell you." But the bird stood silent. There was nobody to wind it up, so it could not go. Death continued to fix the great empty sockets of his eyes upon him, and all was silent, terribly, terribly silent. Suddenly, close to the window, there was a burst of lovely song. It was the living nightingale, perched on a branch outside. It had heard the emperor's need, and had come to bring comfort and hope to him. As it sang, the faces round became fainter and fainter, and the blood flowed with fresh vigor in the emperor's veins and through his feeble limbs. Even Death himself listened to the song and said, "Go on, little nightingale, go on." "Yes," said the nightingale, "if you give me the golden sword. Yes, if you give me the imperial banner. Yes, if you give me the emperor's crown." And Death gave back each of these treasures for a song, and the nightingale went on singing. It sang about the quiet temple yard, where the ancestors are worshipped, where roses bloom and the flowers scent the air, where the fresh grass is ever moistened anew by the tears of mourners. This song brought to Death a longing for his own garden, and like a cold gray mist he passed out of the window. Thank you," said the emperor. "You heavenly little bird, I know you. I banished you from my kingdom, and yet you have charmed the evil visions away from my bed, and even death away from my heart. How can I ever repay you?" "You have rewarded me," said the nightingale. "I brought tears to your eyes the very first time I ever sang to you, and I shall never forget it. Those are the jewels which gladden the heart of a singer. But sleep now, and wake up fresh and strong. I will sing to you." "You must always stay with me," said the Emperor. "You shall sing only when you like, and I will break the artificial bird into 1,000 pieces." "Don't do that," said the Nightingale. "It did all the good it could. Keep it as you have always done. I can't build my nest and live in this palace, but let me come whenever I like. Then I will sit on the branch in the evening and sing to you. I will sing to cheer you and to make you thoughtful too. I will sing to you of the happy ones and of those that suffer. I will sing about the good and the evil which are kept hidden from you. The little singing bird flies far and wide, to the poor fisherman and to the peasant's home, to ones who are far away from you and your court. I love your heart more than your crown, though your crown is blessed. I will come, and I will sing to you, but you must promise me one thing." "Everything," said the Emperor, who stood there in his imperial robes, which he had just put on, and he held the sword heavy with gold upon his heart. "Only one thing I ask you. Tell no one that you have a little bird who tells you everything. It will be better so." Then the Nightingale flew away. The incense had cleared from the palace, and a soft light filled all the rooms and corridors. The attendants came in to look after their dead emperor. And there he stood, bidding them good morning.